Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Achi Benedicta, a student from University of Ghana, and I'm excited to share with you my undergrad thesis, which was titled The Ethnographic Study of the Indigenous Chinchin Barkcloth in Hani-Begho, Ghana. To begin with, barkcloth processing is an ancient heritage that has contributed socioculturally to Africa's indigenous knowledge system and today's fashion. The history of today's fashion cannot be narrated without a mention of barkcloth. Barkcloth was the earliest form of fashion in Africa, and this practice has both intangible and tangible tradition. And this is because the tangible aspect is where the barkcloth is being produced for usage, and the intangible aspect is where the knowledge and then the skill is being passed on from generation to generation. This tradition is about to go extinct in Ghana and other parts of Africa. There were large centers of barkcloth production in West Africa, Central and Eastern Africa, and countries such as Congo, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, and Malawi in East Africa, and Zambia in the Southern Africa were all producing barkcloth in the olden days. In West Africa, the production was among the Asante and the Bono region of Ghana. These are the barkcloth processing and usage in Uganda. Barkcloth can be used as a cloth, as a dress, as mats. People could make shoes, bags out of the bark of a tree. With my study background, Bego was an ancient town noted for trading activities at the southern terminus of the Trans-Saharan Trade Network. And today, ancient Bego is called Hani. Hani is the contemporary town of Bego. And in my presentation today, I'll prefer to use Hani instead of Bego. Hani is located in the 10th district of the Bono region, and it was a famous town known for the production of textiles, including barkcloth. The popular name of barkcloth in the Akan language in Ghana is Chen. However, it is referred to in the local Bono dialect as Bewo and Toma. Unfortunately, there is limited documentation on barkcloth production in Bego, today Hani. And my research was to intervene and to document the practice before total extinction. My research objectives were to examine the manufacturing process of barkcloth production, to explore the tradition and myths associated with the barkcloth industry, to investigate the gender dynamics associated with the barkcloth industry, and to make out continuity and change and how current processes account for the extension of the tradition. My research methodologies were the literary studies, ethnographic field research, photography, and videography. With the literary studies, websites such as ResearchGate and Science Direct were accessed. Libraries such as the Baum Library and the Archaeology and Heritage Studies libraries at the University of Ghana were also visited to acquire on barkcloth production in and outside study contexts. With my ethnographic research, I included direct and indirect observation, where I participated in the entire process of barkcloth production. And I also employed focus group discussion, targeted sampling, and interviews. With my interviews, I used the unstructured interviews where I had my own questions where I could just ask without really giving them a questionnaire to fill for me. Then I also use photography and videography as a method of data collection. In this case, I recorded the entire process of barkcloth production, where I took pictures and then videos of each process during production. And um, these footages could help in future usage, such as putting them together on a drive as a documentary film for further studies. Now, for my findings, I was able to record and then document the entire process relating to the barkcloth production. And to begin with, we first identify your Chen tree. Chen is a local name for a tree used for barkcloth production. And On the in the picture on my right, we could see a cutlass being measured on a tree. According to the man, in the olden days, a cutlass was used to measure the length of the cloth the customer wants. So assuming you want 2 yards, the cutlass is used to measure exactly 2 yards for production to begin. And the length of a cutlass in the olden days was around 45 inches, where currently we call it 1 yard of a cloth. So we then remove the back of the tree and we remove the outer layer of the peeled back, just so that the outer layer is the unwanted part of the back where we do not need. Then we beat the back to soften it. Beating the back, we use a mallet made from a tree called kani in the local dialect. And the mallet has this mark, those stripes on it, where it's mixed whilst beating the back, it expands it and then softens it as well. The back was then folded and then boiled. During the boiling of the back, a stone was put on it to keep it in place. The back was boiled for 30 minutes to avoid itching during usage. Then it was then shaped with a cutlass to cut the unwanted edges off and later dried in shade for 24 hours. Now, this is our backcloth. This is a mat for a baby. We're able to produce a mat for a baby from the entire process of the backcloth production. To satisfy my second objective, that is to explore the tradition and the myths associated with the backcloth industry, I observed protocol by visiting the chiefs and elders to seek for their permission and then make my intention known to them. Then we went to the forest to locate the tree, poured some libation, did some rituals. With the libation, we used schnapp and then 2 eggs. But in absence of schnapp, local gin and then palm wine could be used to make these rituals successful. So we poured libation to the gods to seek for permission before cutting the tree. And according to the man, it's in a way hurting the tree. So you plead on the gods before you cut any part of that particular tree. Then the myths involved are without observing these traditions, the rituals associated with it, you cut the tree and at the end the tree do not grow again. It dies. So in order to prevent that, you just have to observe these rituals for the tree to regain its strength and growth. My third objective was to investigate the gender dynamics associated with the backcloth industry. And I gathered from Phil that with backcloth production, females are not supposed to produce backcloth from beginning to the end. It is a man's job. The female is just supposed to boil the backcloth at this particular stage. This is because they are mostly good at setting fire, then cleaning the pot, putting it on fire, pouring water in it. Just make sure that the backcloth boils for like 30 minutes, right? So the entire process is tedious for a lady to undertake the process from cutting, removing the back of the tree, beating it, then like um, beating to expand and eventually cooking it is a tedious work for a lady to undergo. So it's better for a man to do that work than a lady. But then again, in the olden days, when someone is going to cut the tree in the forest, the wife is not supposed to accompany him if if she's menstruating, right? That is according to the man, it is a form of death. The lady is in quotes dirty to get close to the tree and then even perform the rituals. She's not supposed to be there. Then to my fourth objective, that is to make out continuity and change in how current processes account for the extension of the tradition. It was also noted that during the boiling process, the people still use firewood to boil the backcloth, the back of the tree. And according to the man, this was handed over from generation to generation. And it's mainly because the current way of setting fire, like the use of gas and electrical stoves, are still not been used in the village. So they still rely on firewood to cook their daily food, to yes, to cook and then to set fire. So they intend using firewoods for these things. So I also realized that they've maintained their way of setting fire during this particular production. And with a change, I realized in the olden days, according to the man, the father used to have this clay pots to cook the backcloth. But currently, those clay pots are being substituted with this metal pots. So the woman gave us the pots, the wife of the man who produced the backcloth gave us the metal pots to cook the back and then helped us to set the fire and then at the boiling stage. And the current processes accounts for the extension of the backcloth. We also realized that today's dressing, that is the cotton way of dressing our materials, our fabrics, are in a way substituting the backcloth that we used to have in the olden days. And one man I interviewed was like, the he would prefer we go back to dressing in backcloth than this current state. This is because he thinks today's dressing is more of, in quotes, indecent, because you go to the villages and then these young girls are wearing dresses that are making them half naked. They are not fully covered. So he believes that going back to the olden days and then the presence and introduction of cotton weaving and then kente weaving is taking backcloth out of the system. People are now preferring today's modern dressing to backcloth production. To conclude, even though modern fashion dominates our world, the production of backcloth created a livelihood for individuals. And this actually led to the revenue generation and some level of socio-economic and political status in the past. Also, there was a higher decency in dressing during the use of backcloth compared to today's fashion. And I also like to add that during my interview with one professor in my department, he stated that we could we could try and then salvage this backcloth production from going extinct when we could merge the backcloth with today's fabric. So, for example, in our Ghanaian culture, you could sew a fabric with within a plain fabric, and it's a different form of fashion, which is very nice. So he was suggesting if you could merge backcloth itself with today's fabric. So maybe the hand part could be backcloth where the whole dress is fabric. And it would in a way sustain backcloth in the system. It wouldn't go totally extinct. Now, for my recommendation, I hope to broaden my research scope for comparative studies on other Asian settlements in Ghana, such as Banda. Banda is currently utilizing backcloth during their festivals. And I noted that from my interview with the man who produces backcloth, he stated that he doesn't produce backcloth on large scale currently. This is because people do not buy backcloth. People do not even know the usage of backcloth. So he just produces backcloth for the Banda chief during festivities. So that is where the chief wears it and then performs some rites and rituals during the festival. And that is in a form of advantage to the backcloth production because in a way the backcloth production is still in the system. It is not gone totally because someone is still making use of it for rituals and then rites. And with Pando, regarding Pando, Pando was one of the town that produced backcloth in the olden days, and it's still utilizing it in terms of hunting because backcloth, when well dried, do not smell. So if a hunter uses it to hunt and it has those blood stains in it, it does not smell bloody. And then you just come, then you dry it in shade, and then you are good to go. So therefore, we realized there were disadvantages and then advantages to backcloth because the disadvantage could be it is a tedious work, it is a tedious tradition, it is It is difficult to do from identifying the tree, cutting, removing the back of it, beating it to expand and then soften it, cooking it, drying it to make sure it is not too hard and then it is not very wet because it will just pour when it's not dry so well. And when you dry it in the sun, it will just get hardened and then break eventually. So, and then the advantages was where you could just use it for dressing, you could just use it for bed, for shoes, for bags, and then so there was literally a fashion style in the olden days. So in my next research, I'd like to broaden this particular research to include these two towns to compare the production of backcloth in Bando and then that of Bego. Thank you.